Day 404 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings here on the ground in Ukraine. So we'll start off with having a look at the Russian losses today, and Russia is currently sitting on 175,160 military personnel losses there. Then for hardware, this will also include 1 tank, 7 APVs, 7 artillery, and 1 Russian air defense system. Then we'll move back across to the map and we'll start out in the Bryansk Oblast of Russia, where an explosion destroyed the largest ammunitions depot of the Russian army, as reported. However, the mayor of the oblast said it was a poultry plant that was set on fire somehow, although he could not explain the massive explosions heard. Then we'll move back into the Ukrainian map today. We'll start out in the Donbass, as we like to, and have a look at Bakhmut. So this is where Prigozhin overnight put up a flag over an administrative building in the city of Bakhmut itself, or near to the center of the city, let's say, which, if accurate, could be consistent with this protrusion here, as it was the most northwestern point of this protrusion where this administrative building was. But otherwise, for the Bakhmut map, Ukraine has clearly not given up on it yet. Perhaps in an effort to milk out any last Russian liquidations that they can, and still, this could go on for some time. Even if this section is taken out of the Bakhmut map by Russian forces, it would still be a slow grind on the Western Front there. In fact, this whole area has just been one ongoing slow grind for the Russian forces. Then, nearby, earlier this morning, Russian forces shelled just to the west of Bakhmut, so we need to zoom out for this one here, Konstantinivka, all the way over here, which is about 10 miles away from the nearest contact point, as Russia seeks to up the frequency of attacks like these some distance away. And in the process, they hit some residential buildings. And again, I've got to say, they've got no idea what they're hitting. And even if they did, they lack the accuracy from the worn-out artillery barrels to perform any such strategic and targeted attacks. Then we'll move down on the map to Avdiivka. So here we have Russian aviation conducted 2 missile strikes against Avdiivka in the last day. Then also in the last day, Ukrainian artillery hit and destroyed a base of the Russian forces in Opitne. And this is the other Opitne, not to be confused with the one that's also on the south side of Bakhmut. Then somewhere else in the east, a Russian T-80 tank was taken out. And based on the freeze frames here, this was very likely caused by a Ukrainian Javelin missile, as you can see with its top-down attack vector signature move. Then we'll move across on the map to the Oblast of Zaporizhia. Now, there were several explosions at a Russian base in Melitopol this morning. Those ones reported there. This time, with the occupying government not denying it, but rather suggesting it was as a result of a Ukrainian HIMARS attack based at Orikhiv up here. And you know what? Haven't done this before, but that's got to be the upper limits. 88 kilometers. I think theoretically the upper limits for a HIMARS GMLRS attack, which is 88 kilometers or about 55 miles in length there. So yeah, could have been in HIMARS. Then we'll move across on the map where a bit of a different state of affairs played out for somewhere here today. Not exactly a missile strike, but I'll move to Melnitsky, the oblast right here. So protests occurred in Melnitsky today after employees of the Moscow Orthodox Church had beaten a soldier at the Sunday Mass. Now, allow that to sink in for a moment. So basically what we have here is a member of the clergy, a priest of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, of the Moscow Patriot, smacking down or trying to smack down a Ukrainian soldier at Mass. Real priestly and professional decorum, as you can see there. And so as a result, Ukrainians protested, as you'd expect them to, as they're looking to get this mafia-style church to go back to where it came from. And there was even an older lady, a Ukrainian lady, at the protests submitting her disgust at this Moscow-controlled church, and that the church should have left Ukraine 30 years ago, she said. Of course, referring to right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Then we'll just quickly scoot down the map to Kherson today, which has recently been setting up shelters to protect against Russian shelling and rocket attacks. So this is on the north liberated side, particularly in the city location there. And you know, maybe one day, perhaps, just perhaps one day, these things will be retrofitted into cute little boutique bars or something like that. Then we'll move down to Crimea. So near the newly constructed defense trenches, another explosion occurred, likely as a result of Ukraine hitting a Russian ammo dump. As you can plainly see here, looks quite a bit like the Bryansk ammo dump there as well, mentioned earlier. But it's clear from events like these that Russia is learning the hard way that even if they own or occupy a region, they can no longer store large swaths of munitions in a singular location. They should already know this, honestly. Then we'll move across to some news for today. Starting out, a quick hardware update. So Ukraine has ordered 100 Rosamak armored vehicles from Poland, which are something of a multi-role vehicle. They can be used as a personnel carrier or an infantry fighting vehicle that are produced in Poland under license, as they are of, the base was of Finnish design. So always good to see there. Then in some other news, Igor Girkin is at it once again. And let me just remind you firstly of his somewhat lengthy rap sheet. So he's a Russian patriot, mill blogger, ex-leader of the Donbass militia forces for Russia, and internationally wanted for the downing of the Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 in 2014, which I'm sure you all remember. So in his latest blog, or vlog, that's V for video, he's actually getting into even more inflammatory remarks today. Now saying that Russia is moving towards military defeat. So he goes on to say that the Russian winter offensive failed and that the Russian economy cannot withstand a drawn-out, protracted conflict. And you know, we always all ask the same question about this guy. How is it that he has not yet become well accustomed to a high-rise window defenestration outcome yet? Well, in the least, to start off with, he's tucked away in his little hidey hole somewhere in the Donbass. And with what he said, although he's probably right, he's probably more than likely right, he's actually still quite the Russian patriot and does not see the pointlessness of the war in Ukraine still. Then in some other Russian patriotism news, Russian athletes were given permission to participate in a fencing competition in Poland. However, in order to proceed and go there and compete, they were required to sign a statement saying that they did not support the war. Needless to say, that didn't happen, they didn't sign it, and not because they didn't want to, but because their political system absolutely would not ever allow them to do so. And I've got to say at this point, Russian athletes must hate politics in their sports at this point. For almost 10 years now, ever since the state-sponsored doping scandal Russia was caught implementing from way back in 2014, which is something I always find funny because Russia performed this state-sponsored doping regime with the primary goal of being to enhance the country's image and prestige on the global stage, which, like many things Russia does, simply just backfires. Then a couple of funnies to round it off for today, guys. So, as it turns out, the 70-year-old Russian T-55 tanks and the 20-year-old UK Challenger 2 tanks may likely meet once more on the battlefield. As you might be surprised to find out, this actually happened back in Iraq in 2003, where one British tank crewman back then said it was like a bicycle against a motor car. And now, 20 years have passed and the Challenger 2 has had various upgrades to improve its combat capabilities, effectiveness and survivability, whereas the Russian T-55s have likely all but fallen into an unseasonable state of disrepair. In fact, I bet the singular prerequisite for Russia bringing back online the T-55s was so long as it drives. But let's be honest, there is simply no match between these two, and I still continue to be embarrassed for Russia. Then in a final funny to round it all off for today, guys, so Uncle Luca gives us a laugh again. This time, he's making a speech to his constituents, trying to argue or explain away that Putin doesn't control him or his country, militarily speaking. So he goes on to say he controls the Russian army stationed within Belarus, and that Belarus still has territorial integrity and sovereignty. Sure thing, Uncle Luca, whatever you say. Oh, never mind some leaked documents from about a month ago that showed Russia is actually looking to annex Belarus by 2030. So no wonder this guy's looking a little stressed. Uncle Luca, he's our guy. So thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. I'll be back in a couple of days, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.